Look, as messed up as the world is right now, and as much as we all wish we had a DeLorean so that we could travel in time and get away from all the crap that's going on, maybe living in a different era would not be much better. If I had to choose a different era to live in, it would probably be pre-French Revolution France, but with my luck, I would probably be one of the peasants starving in the streets, so maybe time travel is not the solution, you guys. Hi everybody, Carla here, and last weekend, or more specifically last Sunday, I tried to keep going with my to-watch list, and the next in line was the ITV series Victoria, the first season. I started watching it on Sunday, and what do you know? I actually finished watching it on Sunday because I could not look away from it. I binge-watched the entire 8 episodes straight in one day, and I love that show. So that made me think about all the period pieces that I've seen in my life so far, and some of them are actually movies and shows that I love to rewatch over and over and again, and I never get tired of it. This is really important because apart from being just a geek in general and liking geeky things, another one of the nerdy aspects of my personality is that I love history. I'm probably not very good at remembering history because my memory sucks. I could probably memorize dates and names and stuff for my tests in school. When I had history tests, I would memorize them just for the test and then forget about them. But I like, as any reader would, I just like following the story of the things that actually happened in real life and how amazing they were. So I have a soft spot in my heart for period pieces, whether they be in books, in movies, or TV. And because of that, and because of my current obsession with the ITV show Victoria, I decided I'm just going to make a list of 10 period pieces in movies and TV that I think everybody should watch. Of course, before I go into this list, keep in mind that even though I like history and I love period pieces, I have not watched every period piece known to man. So before you go and leave me angry comments asking me where the hell Spartacus is on this list, or why didn't I mention Schindler's List, or whatever, movie or TV show you like the most that I didn't mention, keep in mind there's a lot of stuff I haven't watched. There's a lot of stuff that, even though it's history and even though it's a period piece and I love period pieces, even then I might not watch it just because of the subject matter. So please keep that in mind. Don't yell at me in the comments. These are just some of my favorite period pieces. I'm listing them not in order, they're not ranked. They're just listed in alphabetical order. And they are movies and TV shows that I just feel that I can rewatch over and over again. And whenever they show up on TV, I rewatch them, or I just pop in my DVD whenever I'm bored to rewatch them because I love them so much, and I think everybody should watch them. If you have any suggestions for me of shows or movies that I should watch based on this list that I'm giving you, feel free. I always love discovering new things. In fact, that's how I discovered Victoria. Somebody else actually recommended it to me and I really loved it. So feel free. Just don't be mean to me about why I haven't watched that one show or that one movie that you love. Sorry, I can't watch everything. That said, I'm just gonna start off right at the top. The first period piece that I want to recommend to you is Marvel's Agent Carter. And I know that sounds kind of weird because it's not really history, it's fictional. But one of the things I love the most about Agent Carter is how it used the setting as almost a tool. Agent Carter felt like a period piece in the same way that the 60s Batman TV show felt like a period piece, in the sense that it feels like it's a show made for its time. It's not meant to translate to every other era. You watch the Batman TV show from the 60s and you say, gosh, this show is so 60s. Well, Agent Carter is that way in that it's a show that could only work within the framework of the directly post-Second World War era and the Cold War era. And it's great because it feels like something you would recognize from radio dramas of that time. You know, them fighting with the Russians and dealing with all the unknowns of nuclear power. And it feels like something that could be out of a comic book. And it's something that I really love because even watching the Marvel movies, the MCU does not necessarily feel like it's come out of a comic book. It feels like a movie. Agent Carter felt like a comic book. It felt like a classic comic book, which was made it even better. I love the characters. Of course, Peggy had her debut in the Captain America movie, the first one. But I think the show made a little pocket universe for itself in a way, in the sense that it was connected to the MCU, but it could still stand on its own so very well. The first season of Agent Carter was fantastic. It was one of the most critically acclaimed Marvel TV shows we've ever had. Second season was not as great, but I still enjoyed it personally, mostly because my favorite character was Sousa, and he got so much more airtime in season 2. And I like the general idea of season 2 because, first of all, it was a completely different setting. It wasn't New York anymore. It wasn't that type of World War II setting that we recognize. It was LA. It was bright. It was sunny. There were flamingos and stuff. And I like that in the sense that it was different, and I like that in the sense that it gave us a glimpse into post-war USA a little bit, and they were dealing with very Cold War topics of science and all the things that we don't know about science and how they can affect us, of course, in a comic book fantastical universe. But it still felt very reminiscent of those 1950s dramas on the radio that have become so famous nowadays. And I just think it's a show that makes the best possible use of its setting, and I really love it and recommend it to everyone. Even if you don't like season 2 as much, at least watch season 1. I love both. I rewatched both. I love the characters. I think the plot is fantastic, but at least season 1, if you're going to give it a try, don't miss this show. It's a tragedy against humanity that this show was cancelled. The second period piece that I want to recommend is actually The Book Thief. It's a movie, I believe it came out in 2014, I'm not entirely sure. I know I was in Berlin when it came out. I actually saw ads for the movie that it was going to come out, so I went out and bought the book. The book is much better than the movie, and that's not a new thing. I mean, most books are much better than their movie adaptations. If you can read the book, but the movie itself has a special place in my heart just because I love that cast so much. I knew the kid who plays Rudy from being in Germany. I had actually seen him in a few things on TV when I was there, and I thought he was the cutest kid ever. I thought he was perfect to play Rudy. The girl who played Liesel was also so adorable, and there's an innocence to the movie that you don't necessarily get in the book. I mean, yeah, you do get it in the book, but in the book they grow up a little bit more. So in the movie they sort of stay a bit more innocent, and I really love it. It's one of the best adaptations that I've seen. It's not exactly faithful to the book. There's a lot of stuff that gets left out, but I just thought it had all the heart that the book had. The cast was amazing. Hans and Rosa, I love them. I love Max. I love all of them, and I rewatched that movie. It's hysterical because it's such a bittersweet ending, as most movies about World War II tend to be. It's not exactly a happy ending, but I still watch that movie whenever I feel like I need something to lift me up, because there's such an innocence and such a heart to it that you just, even if it doesn't end 100% happily, you still want to have that feeling, and I love it. I love those kids, they're adorable, and you know how I am with young casts. I love them. So definitely, if you can watch the movie, and if you can even further than that, read the book. The Book Thief is an incredible story. lovely story. I adore it, and I will watch and rewatch that movie as many times as I humanly possibly can. In fact, I actually kind of want to go and watch it right now. So, there. The third period piece that I'm going to recommend is a TV show, or more accurately, a streaming service show, because it's The Crown by Netflix. The Crown is, I believe, right now it's still the most expensive TV show ever made, and it shows. I mean, that show, the production values on that thing are amazing. And the show itself has been getting a lot of praise from critics. It got a SAG award for Claire Foy as the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, and I believe John Lithgow was also nominated for several things. It's an amazing show. I love the cast. Claire Foy really deserves every nomination she got. She is such, I mean, if you hear her speak as herself and then see her in the show, it's like a complete transformation. Not just the way she looks, but just the way she behaves. It's amazing. And that this little tiny waif of a woman could actually portray a queen. It's incredible. John Lithgow was fantastic as a little old, wretched old dude, Winston Churchill. I think he was good. I mean, I kept it in the back of my mind. I kept going, yeah, but he's not British. But that's kind of a pet peeve for me. I don't think anybody else should be bothered by it, really. Matt Smith, I hadn't seen him in anything since Doctor Who, and I love him in Doctor Who, and I loved him in this. It's such a different character, though, because, let's face it, Prince Philip isn't the easiest character to play out there, but he does a great job with it. He has a lot of chemistry with Claire, and I love it. And Elizabeth's reign is not one that we see as much, because obviously she's still alive, and it's a delicate subject to touch upon when your subject is still alive. It's very well done. It keeps you on your toes. It's all about personal drama, really, and the queen dealing with the fact that she has to be a queen, and she also has to be a wife, and she also has to be part of a family, you know? And the restrictiveness of wearing the crown and all the pressure it puts on a person. I think it's very interesting and incredibly beautiful, well filmed. The cinematography is amazing, and it's just, the production values are through the roof, and I love it. It shows in every scene. It's fantastic. Next one is Little Women, which of course I have mentioned before because Little Women is my favorite book of all time. And Little Women, the 1994 movie in particular, is one of my favorite movies of all time. I rewatch this as much as I possibly can. At least once a year I watch this movie over and over again. It was the movie that really propelled Winona Ryder, I guess, to critical acclaim, because she had been in a lot of popular stuff before that movie, but that was the one that got her an Oscar nomination, and it just showed how much she can do as an actress. The rest of the cast, amazing. I mean, Susan Sarandon, I'm not a big fan of her personally, but as an actress, she's fantastic. She deserved that Oscar nomination as well. It was the movie that introduced me to Kristen Dunst the first time I actually saw her. And then after that, she was in like everything, so that was important. It introduced me to Claire Danes before she even was famous. I had never seen Romeo and Juliet. I knew she was Juliet, but I had never actually seen the movie, because I think that movie came later. But I saw the Little Women movie first, so that's how I was introduced to Claire Danes. And the same thing with Christian Bale, who became pretty much my favorite actor of all time. That was the first movie I saw him in, and it made such a mark on me that every time I see him in a movie after that, I kind of still compare him to Laurie, and he made me love that character so much more than I already did, and I already loved Laurie from the book, so that's saying a lot. Gabriel Byrne as Friedrich, I thought was fantastic, an amazing choice, and actually, again, I believe it was the first time I saw Gabriel Byrne in anything. I'm not entirely sure about the timeline on that one, because I might have seen another movie of his before, but I just thought this cast was excellent by all measures. The production values were great. It didn't look overproduced. It did look like they were this poor family. The way everything worked around them in both cinematography and just dialogue was fantastic. The adaptation was great. And of course, there were a few things in the book that weren't in the movie, but I think it's one of the best adaptations that I've seen, and I will never, ever not love this movie. I like I said, I watch it at least once a year just to remind myself of how much I love that story. And I definitely think as an adaptation, it was top notch. If you have not watched it, please watch it. The cast is going to blow you away. No matter what you think about everything else. Just the cast by itself is enough. Next adaptation I'm going to talk about is back to TV shows, and it's The Musketeers from the BBC. I love that this is a little bit of a modern take on the Musketeers, because the Musketeers are always like fluffy and, giant hats with giant feathers and precisely stitched uniforms and stuff, and it's all very regal, which makes sense because that was the regal part of French history that I was mentioning in my intro. But it's one thing for the court to be like that, and it's another thing for the people working for the court to be like that. And I like this a bit more fresh, more action-y take on the Musketeers. I think it felt very realistic. It dealt with the problems around taking care of the king. It dealt very well with all the issues surrounding the king. I liked that it wasn't just, oh, this strange random person has a grudge against the monarchy and wants to kill the king. Sure, there was enough of that, but they actually went into a little bit of the conflict that the French monarchy had with other countries at the time, which I thought was really good. It went a bit into the family issues of Louis XIII, and of course the issue that the queen was Spanish and how that played out on the public opinion at that time. I thought that was really cool. The Musketeers felt grittier, felt more real. I liked what they did with each of their personalities and each of their backgrounds, the relationships between them, the friendship between them. It was something that you could feel even from the first episode. You could see that these people were actually going to develop a bond that you were going to love. I thought Luca Pasqualino was great as D'Artagnan, and my favorite is actually Santiago Cabrera as Aramis. I loved him. I loved his relationship with the queen. It was fantastic because I've seen before, they have mentioned that one of the Musketeers was probably somehow involved with the queen, and that's not a new thing, but I like that it was Aramis because usually Aramis is, the religious one, the proper one, the one that doesn't get involved in scandals, but yet he did in this one, and I really, really love that. I love the entirety of the show. All 3 seasons are fantastic. Season 2, not as much, but 1 and 3 I loved. It's got one of the most perfect endings to any TV show I have ever seen in my life. I love the ending. I would rewatch the last 2 episodes just over and over again just because I can. And I loved it. The cast was fantastic. The plot was fantastic. I love how they sort of took a little bit of the history of the French at that point in time and sort of tied it all with a little bit more fictional, more fantastical elements. I love the grittiness of it. I love that it felt real. The production values were amazing. So BBC did a great job with this one. Next one I'm gonna mention, and there's a big caveat for this one because I think it's one of the best period pieces you will ever see, and it's ThePianist, starring Adrien Brody. I have this thing. I don't watch movies to suffer. That's what I keep telling everybody when people are like, why don't you watch horror? And I'm like, I don't go to the movies to be terrified and traumatized for life. Okay, I don't. It's one of the main reasons that I don't watch many World War II dramas, because most of them are very, very tragic. And while intellectually I understand what happened, and I, of course, empathize with anybody who had to go through it, the Holocaust was a terrible thing, I can't stand watching it. It's very painful for me to watch, and it just leaves me with a very sick feeling in my stomach. And that's why most of the time I tend not to watch stuff that takes place in World War II. There are exceptions like The Book Thief, because The Book Thief was overall, even though it was bittersweet at the end, It was overall more upbeat and more innocent, more uplifting. The Pianist is none of those things. It's a really hard movie to watch, and I really only watched it to begin with because Adrien Brody won the Oscar, and I was already paying attention to the Oscars at that point in my life. So I said, hey, I like Adrien Brody, I'm gonna give this a try. I'll watch it. I think I've watched that movie like 2 or 3 times in my lifetime, and I don't know that I ever want to watch it again. Because it's so hard to watch. It's just such a chore. But I think it's one of those movies that you need to watch at least once in your life. It's an amazing movie. Adrien Brody's performance is like one of the greats. For me, I can't imagine what he put himself through in order to portray this role, and it was amazing. And it's one of the harshest movies that I've seen that are Holocaust based. But I do warn you, if you take this recommendation, that it's going to be a hard movie to watch. So if you're not into that, maybe think about it twice. But I really do think that it's a movie that everybody needs to watch once. By the way, this is basically the reason why I have never watched Schindler's List. If you think about it, it's pretty much the same thing. Except with Schindler's List, when it came out, I was still very young. So I never felt the urge to actually go back and watch it. But The Pianist was actually out in theaters when the buzz started for the Oscar win. So that's why I watched this and not Schindler's List, but both of them are kind of in the same category in my mind of movies that I wouldn't necessarily watch for pleasure. So keep that in mind. Next movie is actually Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 one with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden. This movie is absolutely gorgeous. It's incredibly gorgeous. And just for that, you should watch it. Just for that alone. I mean, the landscapes that you see, the incredible cinematography of that movie. I believe it was nominated for an Oscar as well for cinematography, and if it didn't win, I'm shocked. I can't remember, but it should have won because that movie is absolutely gorgeous. It takes the best of the English landscape and just puts it in a movie that is a joy to watch as it is to actually understand and go through. But most of all, this is the first movie that actually made me realize that Keira Knightley is a freaking beast when it comes to acting. She is amazing. I had already seen her in stuff like in The Pirates and King Arthur and Love Actually and a bunch of stuff, but I did not know that she could act like this. And it was amazing because she is so great. She's the perfect Lizzie Bennet. The production values were great. Matthew McFadden, I think he's one of the first Darcys that actually convinced me. I've seen a lot of adaptations of this story, but he is the first one that I could actually see as Mr. Darcy. Just the entirety, the cast was amazing. Rosamund Pike and Jenna Malone and Donald Sutherland. Just everybody was so great. The characters were so perfectly done and perfectly shown to us. I could see the bond between these sisters happen so clearly in front of my eyes, and just, this is going to make me sound like a sap, but it's such a romantic movie. I loved it. I often tell people that I'm not sentimental because I'm really not. In real life I'm not, but I'm very sentimental when it comes to my fiction. And this is one of those movies that just, I need to watch it with a pillow or something to hold, or my Scooby-Doo plushie or something to hold, because every time something romantic happens I'm just like, ah! Even now, like, whenever it's on TV, I rewatch it. But it makes me feel such feelings that I can't help it. It's also one of the most quotable movies that I've seen. I'm usually not great when it comes to quotes because, again, my memory not the best. I'm basically Dory, guys. But this is one of the most quotable movies I have ever seen. Like, I will mouth the lines along with the TV screen when it's on and I'm watching it. I will mouth the lines. Make me realize that you were the last man in this world that I would ever be prevailed upon to marry. If, however, your feelings have changed, I will have to tell you, you have bewitched me, body and soul, and I love you. Such a quotable movie. I can't even, you guys. It's so great. If you haven't seen it, go watch it right now. It's such a great movie. Such a fantastic movie. Beautiful, well acted, incredible production values. One of the jewels of the 2000s. Definitely go watch Pride and Prejudice right now! Next movie I'm going to mention is one that I have actually mentioned in a few of my videos before, and it's the Rurouni Kenshin movie. Why? Because period pieces don't actually have to happen in Europe anymore, or in the USA anymore. You can have a period piece in Japan, and it works beautifully. I think this is of course an adaptation of a manga by Nobuhiro Uesugi, and I really loved the manga. The manga was great. It had some fantastical elements too. The movie adaptations actually make it a little bit more realistic, or at least the first movie does. It makes it feel a bit more grounded in actual Japan history, I guess. And I really enjoyed that, and it's such a great adaptation. The production values are through the roof. I never knew that a Japanese adaptation of a manga could look this good, because I'm always iffy about them. They always look fake to me, because the budgets in Japan are clearly not as high as they would be in Hollywood. But Rurouni Kenshin subverts my expectation completely. It looks like something out of history for sure. The plot lines are great, it's funny, the characters are believable, you totally believe the bond that they have forged in a really quick time, by the way, because it also, the plot just develops really fast, but you actually believe it. And you believe that these people care for each other. The choreography is incredible. I'm never one for fights, but the choreographies in the Rurouni Kenshin series of movies are off the hook. They are amazing. They're a beauty to watch. Just those fight scenes are a beauty to watch. And I think even if you haven't read the manga, even if you've never seen the anime, you really, really should go and watch the Rurouni Kenshin movie. At least the first one. The second and third I still like. They're not as great, but the first one is the gold standard for those movies. So please, please go watch them, give them a try. Maybe that way they can make actually better quality Japanese adaptations of manga properties, because we need more of that. We absolutely need more of that, and if Hollywood won't do it, then Japan should do it. And this is proof that they can do it in great quality, with decent budgets, and respecting the source material to a T. It's fantastic. Next period piece I want to mention is the one that started this whole list, and that is Victoria from ITV. I mainly watched this to begin with because I love the young Victoria, which I will talk about later. That one was a movie, this one is a TV show, so it's a series of 8 episodes, and I knew Jenna Coleman from Doctor Who, obviously. And when she left Doctor Who, I didn't really mind. I wasn't watching the show at that point. I watched the first few, like the first season and a half that she was in there. I liked her in Doctor Who, but I like her way more as Victoria. She's so much better. It's so great. And again, production values are off the hook. You really do feel like you're in Victorian England in this show. It's incredible. And I think Jenna Coleman delivers a little bit of a girlishness that wasn't necessarily present in other adaptations of Victoria's life that I've seen. Of course, they present Lord Melbourne in a very different way than other adaptations have presented him, because other adaptations make him a little bit more of a scheming man. In this show, you could see that he actually cared for Victoria. And there was a little bit more of a tease about the romance between them and stuff. But Rufus Sewell did an incredible job with that character. It's a pity that they had to phase him out when Albert came into the picture. But I really, really enjoyed his performance. Albert was okay. It always seems to me that in these adaptations of Victoria's life, Albert sort of falls by the wayside. If I had one complaint, it felt like their romance happened a little bit too quickly, and I guess it's because they wanted to make a demarcation of, Melbourne and then Albert, so like that line is not crossed. But I think it happened a little bit too quickly. I wish they could have taken a little bit more time to see their interact, because it seemed like they went from hating each other to loving each other in one conversation. But apart from that, I thought they had great chemistry. I thought it was palpable how attracted they were to each other, and how interested they were in pursuing each other as a consort. I really loved it. They also handled very well the fact that while Victoria is trying to assert her independence and her power as a queen, she's also very inexperienced, and it wasn't just one of those things where it seemed like her mother was the bad guy or Conroy was the bad guy, which happens often in other adaptations. But that, sure, they were a bit manipulative, but Victoria wasn't a saint herself either. She was making rash decisions every once in a while, and I really like that they touched upon that, and she was letting her emotions rule her every once in a while, and I like that. I like that they made a bit clear her attraction to Melbourne, and that it was kind of blinding her a little bit. I like that they looked at her from all angles and not just the one where she has to be the queen and she has to be the leader of this country and she's going to do it her way, but you know, sometimes she makes mistakes and sometimes she lets her emotions rule her. So I really like that. It seemed very interesting from a feminism point of view as well, because it rounds her as a character. She's a very well-rounded character, and I really liked what they did with everybody around her. Really, it's a lovely show, and I can't wait to watch season 2. I hope it gets here soon. I'm not entirely sure when it's coming out, but I hope it gets here soon. The last period piece that I want to recommend is actually along the same lines. It's The Young Victoria, which is a movie. I don't remember when it came out, 2009 maybe, I'm not sure, but it's the movie with Emily Blunt and Rupert Friend, and I love that movie. I watched that movie not too long ago with my cousins during a movie night. Victoria's story is so fabulous, really. It's so great, and it was such a great period of the story of England and the United Kingdom that it's just fascinating to watch for me. And I think, as much as I love Jenna Coleman in the show, Emily Blunt brings a presence. You know, there's something to her that is real, and I like that. Unlike Jenna, Emily Blunt always sort of felt like a woman to me. I never got the feeling that she was being childish or that there was anything girlish about her. I saw her as a queen from moment one, even at the beginning of the movie. It was really hard for me to picture her as an 18-year-old girl. But even so, everything that comes from the moment that she gets the crown until later is just fantastic. And I really love how they dealt with the machinations, because in this one, Melbourne, played by Paul Bettany, was actually a little bit more manipulative than he was in the TV show, but both takes are really great, even though they're very different. I like seeing the machinations behind everything. I like seeing how it taught me a lot about how the monarchy in England works. I don't really understand much of it because I've never had a monarch in my country, so that was interesting. How the Queen and the Parliament have to deal with each other, and how things have to change when the Parliament changes, even though the Queen should technically be able to choose her own things, the limitations that she has as a monarch. It was all so very interesting. It was beautiful to watch. The settings were incredible. I just really love this movie, and like I said, I watched it not too long ago, but I have watched it already like 15 times because I love it. Every time it's on TV, I have to stop and watch this movie. It's so great. So definitely, if you can, give it a watch. And just let me know what you think of it if you do. I just want to make some honorable mentions that I also love, that are period pieces but didn't necessarily make the list of 10. You have, for example, The Tudors, which was really good initially. It went down the drain a little bit, but the first couple of seasons were fantastic. Then you have stuff like Merlin, the BBC show, which again starts up really great. It goes down the drain a little in later seasons, and I stopped watching it at some point, but at the beginning it was really great. Same with Robin Hood. The first 2 seasons of Robin Hood are fantastic. Up until the last episode of season 2, then it all goes to hell. But if you can watch those first 2 seasons, you will love it. And then there's, of course, the Sense and Sensibility adaptation with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet, which is one of my favorites to this day. I adore that movie. It feels a little bit dated nowadays, and that's why it doesn't make my main list, but I love that movie as well. And then you have the stuff that is not necessarily a period piece because it takes place in a completely different universe than our own, but it feels like a period piece because of the costuming and the cinematography and the production and the sets and the costumes and everything. For example, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones feels like a medieval show. And you have something like Chronicles of Narnia, which actually does take place in World War II, but most of it takes place in Narnia, so it doesn't really count. And you have something like Lord of the Rings, which again, it feels like a medieval story of kings and swords and knights and stuff like that. So keep those in mind. If you haven't watched them, please go watch them. They're all great. And that's about it for me today. I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week yet, but if you have any suggestions, just drop them in a comment down below. Anything that you'd like me to talk about, anything geeky, be it from TV, movies, books, any sort of thing like that, feel free to just let me know in a comment. And if it's anything that I know, anything I have any knowledge of, I will make sure to add it to my list of stuff to talk about in the future. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you like my stuff, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always happy to see whenever I have new likes, new shares, new subscriptions, new comments. Discussing these topics with you guys is one of my favorite things to do in the world, so please keep at it. In the meantime, you can find me on social media. I am on Twitter and Instagram at girlsoweird with underscores between the words, and I am on Tumblr at girlsoweird with hyphens between the words. You can find a Facebook page for this vlog at facebook.com/FreakingNarnia. And as usual, be sure to visit my main website at FreakingNarnia.com. All my videos are up there in case you want to catch up with something you might have missed in the past. Also, be sure to visit my Redbubble store where I make art for my favorite quotes from my favorite fandoms, and then you can use that art to print on merchandise such as coffee cups, computer covers, any sort of stuff like that. Please feel free to stop by and maybe purchase something if you're in the mood. Small announcement, I am also slowly but surely converting the entries in the Talks from Freaking Narnia series into podcast episodes. For the moment, I think you can locate them on iTunes and Stitcher under the title Talks from Freaking Narnia, so be sure to look it up. I would still prefer that you watch the videos because the format just fits so much better. But if for any reason you can't watch the videos on YouTube, you can find them in podcast form so you don't miss it. For now, I only have a couple of episodes up, but I will be updating more in the future with all the talks that I've had in the past. And that's about it for me today. I will see you guys next week with another video from all the way in freaking Narnia. Hang on to your DeLoreans, guys. Someday time travel will be an actual thing. Bye! In the French court era of royalty in France, dates and stuff, the best character, I think this movie took the freaking bit. It made me realize that you were. If, however, you feel